What's up everyone, and welcome back to the Echoes of Time channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. 14 things to know about Victoria Woodhull, the first female president. Victoria Woodhull was who? You won't forget her after you hear her story, even if you don't know her name. Despite being a third-party candidate, she was the first woman to seek for the presidency of the United States. She was a pioneer for women's suffrage and founded a newspaper. During a time when women were not allowed to work or vote, Woodhull also became one of the first female stockbrokers on Wall Street and even owned her own firm. On September 23, 1838, Woodhull was born in the small Ohio town of Homer. Then known as Victoria Claflin, she was the eighth of 10 children. Her father, Reuben, also known as Old Buck, sold snake oil, and her mother, Roxana, was a member of the emerging spiritualist organization, making her upbringing unusual. Woodhull traveled from Ohio to New York and then England. At the age of 88, Woodhull passed away in Worcestershire, England, on June 9, 1927, after leading a very long and somewhat contentious life and leaving an incalculable political impact. Victoria Woodhull is a unique and intriguing historical character, from her peculiar upbringing to her revolutionary political career. She was a presidential candidate. Woodhull was the first woman to run for president in history, even though Hillary Clinton was the first to do so on a major party ticket in 1872. In 1870, Woodhull announced her intention to run for office in 1872. The Equal Rights Party, formerly the People's Party, was a tiny independent party that she campaigned under. She faced off against Democratic contender Horace Greeley and incumbent Republican Ulysses S. Grant. Frederick Douglass was Woodhull's running mate, although he never accepted the role. Indeed, Douglass advocated for Grant in public addresses. Woodhull was unable to cast a ballot on Election Day. Woodhull was also imprisoned that day for sending pornographic material in the mail after her newspaper exposed Henry Ward Beecher's adultery, even though women didn't have the right to do so at the time. Although it's unclear if Woodhull earned any popular votes, she did not receive any electoral votes. In the United States, she and her sister were the first women to launch a newspaper. In 1870, Woodhull founded a newspaper with her sister, Tennessee Claflin. The publication, known as Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly, ran from 1870 until 1876. The periodical addressed a number of contentious issues that Woodhull favored, including free love, women's suffrage, and spiritualism. The newspaper revealed Henry Ward Beecher's extramarital affairs and was the first American publication to publish Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. The first American newspaper to be owned, operated, and published by women was Woodhull and Claflin's Weekly. Men Funded the Revolution, a women's rights periodical founded by Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, even though it started publishing in 1868. She founded Wall Street's first female-run stock brokerage. With the financial support of Cornelius Vanderbilt, who was allegedly the lover of Tennessee Claflin, Woodhull and her sister established the first female-owned Wall Street brokerage in 1870. The firm, known as Woodhull, Claflin and Company, also had other female employees. Woodhull and Claflin were exceedingly successful and soon gained a reputation as the seductive brokers. The two gained millions by following Vanderbilt's investment recommendations and creating some of their own. She gave testimony in favor of women's suffrage before Congress. Woodhull was the first woman to address a congressional committee on January 11, 1871. In a speech to the House Judiciary Committee, she asserted that women were granted the right to vote by the recently enacted 14th and 15th Amendments. Benjamin Butler, a Republican from Massachusetts with whom Woodhull had become friends, had sent the invitation. Woodhull's claim that women may vote under the new amendments was not successful. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote in 1920. However, lawmakers listened to her for a little moment. She was a spiritualist, clairvoyant, and magnetic healer. At an early age, Woodhull's parents employed her as a clairvoyant. According to reports, she began experiencing visions at the age of 11, and her sister, Tennessee Claflin, also experienced premonitions. In order for the girls to support the family financially, Woodhull's mother, who was a supporter of the emerging spiritualist movement, encouraged them to travel. They performed seances and told fortunes while traveling. In addition, Woodhull was a magnetic healer who used a variety of magnetic healing tools to assist the ill and injured. As adults, she and her sister were able to establish their magnetic healing practice in New York City due to their success. She was a proponent of free love. Woodhull has 3 marriages. At the age of 15, she wed Dr. Canning Woodhull, her first husband, and the two of them had 2 kids, Zula and Byron. Woodhull reportedly worked as a topless waiter in San Francisco after the family relocated there. After 11 years of marriage, Woodhull's husband abandoned the family, and they eventually found themselves in New York City. After divorcing her first husband, Woodhull married Colonel James Harvey Blood, a spiritualist who endorsed her views on free love. In 1876, they got divorced. In 1901, she married John Biddulph Martin for the 3rd time, but he passed away. Woodhull didn't appear to care about her reputation, despite the fact that divorce was widely frowned upon in the 1800s. She believed that rather than staying in marriages just because it was expected of them, women should have the freedom to leave those that were intolerable. This freedom to select one's relationships was reinforced by the free love concept that was popular at the time. She was in favor of making prostitution legal. Woodhull often resisted accusations that she was a sex worker. Despite her advocacy for legalized prostitution, historical evidence indicates that she was not one. That was only one aspect of her free love ideology that highlighted the drawbacks of monogamy. Woodhull even focused a portion of her presidential campaign on legalizing prostitution because she was angry that women in New York City were being arrested for it. But she had to contend with a very prim and proper Victorian culture and the new Comstock Act, which made it hard to get any things that were considered obscene. She became a member of the International Workingmen's Marxist Association. Supporters of Marxism organized a group of left-leaning intellectuals called the International Workingmen's Association. Originally based in London, the organization, also known as First International, sprang up branches across Europe and the U.S. very rapidly. In her newspaper, Woodhull and Claflin Weekly, Woodhull, who belonged to the association's women's section, wrote pieces endorsing the group's socialist stance. Unfortunately, as she started her presidential candidacy, her reputation suffered due to her support for Marxism. Her association with the group only served to exacerbate her already contentious public persona. She and the Vanderbilts were close. During her time in New York City, Woodhull developed a strong relationship with Cornelius Vanderbilt, also known as the Commodore. He helped her launch her Wall Street firm and offered investment advice. Although it hasn't been confirmed, there were reports that Woodhull and Vanderbilt were in love, as well as that he was in love with her sister Tennessee Claflin. Woodhull received a sizable donation from William Henry Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt's son and heir, after his death. This, according to some historians, was a payoff to make sure she didn't talk about her relationship with the Commodore. Whether it true or not, Woodhull accepted the money and moved to London, where she became a lecturer. She was arrested for disseminating pornographic material. A special edition of the Woodhull and Claflin Weekly was published in November 1872. One of the many sensational allegations in this issue targeted abolitionist and well-known preacher Henry Ward Beecher. The married Beecher, who often criticized Woodhull's free love philosophy, had been having an affair, according to an article that Woodhull wrote and published. According to other articles, Luther Shallis, a Wall Street broker, had wooed a number of young women. There are historians who believe that this issue was either created to garner support for Woodhull's presidential campaign, or that she and her sister had been blackmailing these individuals and went public when they refused to pay. In any event, Woodhull and Tennessee Claflin were arrested for distributing pornographic material via the U.S. mail as a result of this special issue. She didn't have a formal education. Woodhull was never formally educated. In the early to mid-1800s, state-mandated schooling was uncommon and typically only attended by the wealthy. Impoverished families relied on their children working to support themselves. Woodhull's circumstances meant that she only attended the Methodist Church School in Homer, Ohio, for 3 years of formal schooling because her father was a con artist and her mother was illiterate. It became much more challenging for Woodhull and her siblings to get an education after their mill burned down, and Woodhull's father started moving the family throughout Ohio after being charged with insurance fraud. She thought that women and men were on an equal footing. Woodhull thought that the disparities of the day were unjust and that women and men were on an equal footing. She advocated for women's suffrage and even addressed Congress on the subject. Woodhull said that it was absurd that women were expected to stay prim and nice, not own their own enterprises, and not be able to divorce their spouses. She even went so far as to assert that women have the same rights as men and are on an equal footing with the law. She and several well-known suffragettes had a falling out. Because they were all fighting for the same goal, you may assume that the women's suffrage movement of the late 1800s and early 1900s was made up of friendly women. That's not quite accurate. At first, Woodhull shared the views of her fellow campaigners, but Susan B. Anthony and her supporters soon turned on her, accusing her and her sister of being among the obscene and indecent. Evidently, Woodhull's great political aspirations, attention-seeking tendencies, and views on free love were too much for the other suffragists to accept.